everyone, it's Maki here. The stories in the Gundam series are renowned for being profound and captivating. Today, I'd like to introduce the way of thinking of Mr. Yoshiyuki Tomino. He created the original 0079, built the world of the Universal Century, and laid the foundation for many Gundam series. Let's analyze his ideas and explore the true nature of the enemy in the Universal Century series. This kind of research will also be helpful when analyzing stories from the alternative series. If you would like to support my channel, please consider joining the membership for just 99 cents per month. As a thank you, you'll receive a name badge and comment stamps. Now then, let's begin the research. What do you think the defining characteristic of the Earth's Federation government is? Gear and Zobi himself explains it in the story of the original 0079. The policy known as absolute democracy forms the very foundation of the Earth's Federation government. The term also appears in the Gundam Record Complete Collection, which was released after the TV anime series aired. The phrase absolute democracy does not exist in the real world, at least for now. It's a concept created by Tomino when developing the Universal Century world. In the setting document written by Tomino, the Earth's Federation government is described as an extreme form of consensus-based governance. The Earth's Federation government is characterized by treating conclusions reached through parliamentary discussion as absolute and giving them priority. Hearing this idea in isolation, it can sound very rational, almost like an ideal for humanity. It means that government policy is determined through discussion rather than conflict. This concept also appears in the novel written by Tomino. In Volume 1, Gear and Zobi says the following. The idea that governance through absolute democracy and absolute parliamentarism brings peace and happiness to humanity is a mistake. Tomino repeatedly uses the term absolute democracy throughout the early planning stages, the TV anime and the novel. It is the defining feature of the Earth's Federation government, and in a sense represents the enemy throughout the Gundam series as a whole. However, describing it as an enemy may not be entirely accurate. A more appropriate description would be a difficult challenge that all of humanity must overcome. The protagonist, Amore, also shares his thoughts on absolute democracy. Let's take a look at what he says in Volume 1 of the novel. The term absolute democracy sounds beautiful. It is a policy that places the highest importance on parliament, and nothing can be carried out unless more than 2/3 of members agree. In other words, political maneuvering within parliament becomes the true essence of politics. Even from the protagonist's own words, his criticism of absolute democracy is clear. Nevertheless, democracy, where policies are decided through collective discussion, can seem wonderful. It seems more reasonable than the dictatorships of the past, where kings and nobles ruled the people unilaterally. So, what problems was Tomino focusing on? He consistently placed the theme of absolute democracy at the core of the stories he created. Even in Reconquista in G, the last Gundam series Tomino produced, this remains true as of 2026. In his book, in which he states that you must not underestimate the act of creating animation, he describes the setting of Reconquista in G. He writes the following. The entire Earth had fallen into a lukewarm system of absolute democracy. Tomino also adds a note on the term absolute democracy, describing it as another name for totalitarianism. Totalitarianism is an ideology or system that mobilizes individuals towards the goals of the whole. It is a state in which individuals are compelled to act for the sake of the nation or collective. At the core of his stories is the idea that a system which treats parliamentary decisions as absolute can eventually transform into totalitarianism. What kind of existence do you think a typical evil nation or organization in a story has? In many stories, they are depicted as regimes in which a dictator exercises absolute power and oppresses others. These nations are often governed by systems similar to totalitarianism. In other words, it is a state in which individual freedom is restricted and exploitation is enforced for the sake of the dictator's goals. Tamino depicted how democracy can transform into totalitarianism. The key word here is absolute. By adding this word to democracy, the term absolute democracy was created. As we have seen under this policy, decisions made by parliament must be followed absolutely. Through the concept of absolute, democracy transforms into totalitarianism. Parliamentary decisions become absolute. Any ideology that does not follow these decisions is treated as an enemy. This is the fundamental problem within the universal century world. In Hathaway's Flash, the bill passed at the Adelaide Conference plays a pivotal role. Maki acts to prevent the bill from being passed. As mentioned in other discussions, if the bill is passed, it will create a situation in which the people of the Earth's Federation government can manage and control us and forcibly remove those who do not comply. Parliamentary decisions are absolute. Those who do not follow these goals are deemed enemies of all humanity. Within the story, we see scenes in which those who do not obey the Earth's Federation government are eliminated through massacres carried out by the Earth's Federation forces. In short, Mafti is trying to prevent the rise of a dictator. What kind of outcome would result if people began to subordinate themselves to an absolute goal? This concept is explored in Tomino's story, Gaia Gear. Gaia Gear began publication in 1987. It was completed in 1991. Hathaway's Flash began publication in 1989 and was finished the following year. These two stories were written almost in parallel. Let's take a look at a passage from Volume 4 of Gaia Gear. The larger an organization becomes, the more people end up acting for the sake of maintaining the organization itself. If an organization grows large enough that a person can spend their entire life within it, they will devote themselves solely to supporting it and become obsessed with preserving and prolonging its existence. In other words, they begin to act while forgetting the organization's original purpose. The organization as a whole also forgets its purpose. The problem of organizations becoming hollow over time is a recurring issue in many places. This applies not only to bureaucracies, but also to private companies. This phenomenon is a fatal cancer inherent in organizations created by humanity. Even in the present day, this cancer remains incurable. Absolutism causes people to focus solely on the preservation and continuation of the organization they belong to. This is the difficult challenge that humanity must overcome as depicted by Tomino. Now, let's take a look at a line spoken by Camille Bidan in Zeta Gundam. He says it to Optimus C. Rocco, who seeks to control the world from the shadows. That arrogance turns people into livestock. It turns human beings into tools. And that's the one thing humans must never do to each other. Viewing this line through the lens of the rise of totalitarianism caused by the transformation of absolute democracy and the outcome where people act only to preserve and prolong their organizations gives us a completely new perspective. Doesn't it become much clearer when we consider these words alongside the concept of absolute democracy and its transformation into totalitarianism? This theme is quite complex. I'd like to explore it from different angles in a series of discussions. It might also be interesting to observe series outside the universal century through the lens of Tomino's ideas. For instance, the Seed series features a policy known as the Destiny Plan. This is a system that attempts to determine people's entire lives based on their genetic suitability. It's a typical dystopian ideology. Some might feel it's an unusual and out-of-place element for the Gundam series. However, the idea of deciding people's lives solely for the survival of humanity is similar to Tomino's concept of absolute democracy and its consequences. What about Izokant in the H series? He also sought to control humanity and create a paradise called Eden. He was trying to do exactly what Camille condemned, turning humans into livestock. In fact, you might find that this structure, which Tomino described as a cancer of humanity, is present at the core of not only the Universal Century series, but the Gundam series as a whole. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. I'll see you again in the next episode.